Damn it, Spielberg. The Fabelmans is the newest film from director Steven Spielberg, and it stars Michelle Williams, Seth Rogen, Paul Dano, Judd Hirsch, and Gabriel LaBelle. And it tells the story of young Sammy Fabelman, who's growing up in post-World War II era Arizona. He aspires to become a filmmaker as he reaches adolescence, but soon discovers a shattering family secret and explores how the power of films can help him see the truth. Now, this is one of my most anticipated movies of the entire year. Anything that Steven Spielberg makes, he is the GOAT, arguably the greatest filmmaker of all time. Anything that he makes, I'm going to be there day one supporting it. So you have that, but you also have the stacked cast. Plus, it's a movie about making movies, which just sounds right up my alley. But it pains me to say this is one of the most disappointing movies of the entire year for me. And I'll get into why in a second, but before we get any further into this review, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and comment down below what are your thoughts or expectations for The Fabelmans. But let's keep talking about it. Where this movie worked best for me was when it really honed in on the love that many of us have for filmmaking, us aspiring filmmakers, how we show our love of the art within making films or supporting films, whatever it may be, anything filmmaking. That's when this movie really worked. There were some truly magical sequences, whether that's our main character, Sammy, we're watching him watch one of his own movies, or watching the first movie he's ever seen, really. Him going to the movie theater for the first time. All of these specific special sequences in Steven Spielberg's life. I know this is a semi-autobiographical movie, so it's not all fully based on his life, but you can tell how much this story and this movie does mean to him. During an interview promoting this movie, Seth Rogen mentioned how Steven Spielberg, for a majority of the days that they were filming this movie, he was crying. I think that just goes to show you how much of a passion project this is for him. I so badly wanted to come out of this movie saying this is one of his best movies. I think this is bottom tier Spielberg. I'll start off with my positives, and I do think that the cast does a good job here. My favorite performance was Seth Rogen, who plays Sammy, our main character's uncle. He honestly doesn't have that much screen time, and I do wish that we got more of him in the movie. But when he is there, Seth Rogen definitely makes an impact. Paul Dano and Michelle Williams have a couple moments that shine, but most of their moments felt like just Oscar baity. Not to say that they're bad in this movie, but just a couple moments feel very showy, if that makes sense. And as for Gabriel LaBelle, this is his star-making performance, really. In a Steven Spielberg movie, that must be pretty cool. But here, I think his character is lacking, but also I just didn't find his performance to be all that great. Then you have Judd Hirsch. He has maybe less than 10 minutes of screen time in this movie. The main scene with him in it felt incredibly awkward. It was very bizarre and felt misplaced. And there are unfortunately a couple scenes like that in this movie. I'm also a sucker for great costume and set design, and this movie has that. You feel transported back to the 1950s, 1960s. It really does feel like a time capsule, and that's one of my favorite time periods in movies. And like I mentioned, most of my favorite sequences in this movie were the sequences where Sammy was making a movie, directing his first ever little short. You see the magic unfold before his eyes, and I feel like Spielberg really tapped into that aspect, but not enough. This movie is at its best when it's showcasing Sammy's love for making films and the impact that it has on his family members as well. There's a compelling disconnect that Sammy has between his father, played by Paul Dano, that isn't really explored enough. Plus, Sammy's mom, played by Michelle Williams, she loves that he makes movies and she loves his movies, period. But the relationship between his father and his mom aren't explored enough. And that's just where I'll really get into my issues with this movie. I do think the writing was very lacking. On an emotional level, in depth, it all could have used some real rewrites, which is a shame because this is written by Steven Spielberg himself and longtime collaborator Tony Kushner, and it felt unfocused. There are way too many ideas for a 2.5 hour long movie. It explores growing up as a Jew, moving from state to state while you're growing up, the trials and tribulations of families and family members, and of course our main character's love for filmmaking. All of these ideas are thrown into this movie, and it just makes it feel very bloated. Plus, that runtime, like I mentioned, does not help. This movie felt like an absolute drag to get through. After the first act, which moves very quickly, it slows down heavily, and I was never fully able to get invested after that first act. It's also just far too long, with a couple scenes that could have been removed and put in with other scenes that could have helped develop our characters. Plus, it just gets a little too cheesy, especially with Sammy's girlfriend, who is a very religious person, and they really play into how much she loves Jesus, for example, which I have no problem with at all, but it just felt very cheesy here, and just the comedy didn't work on that end. I think the icing on the cake here was our main protagonist, Sammy, that I keep talking about. I wasn't the biggest fan of his character. I just couldn't get invested in his story and just the movie in general, like I mentioned. And it really is just such a shame, because I wanted to love this movie. I wanted to come out of it being filled with such joy, but instead, I got to my car and was visibly angry. Did I have too much high expectations for this movie? Maybe so, But when you have a movie coming from Steven Spielberg, this is one of his later movies in his lifetime, really. He's been making movies for nearly half a century now. You would think that he would get stuff like this down pat, but it really just felt like this movie needed more development, more time taken to the writing. Don't get me wrong, I still love Steven Spielberg. I don't dislike him now, but I'm just frustrated. Too cheesy, bloated, overly long, and just not that much depth to each of our characters. I'm gonna give The Fabelmans a C. Keep in mind, this is coming from someone that wants to make movies. There was just a big disconnect between me and the movie here, and that's why it just didn't work for me. But I want to hear your guys' thoughts on The Fabelmans. Let me know down below in the comment section, what did you think of it? And thank you so much for watching this review. And again, if you did enjoy it, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, plus that notification bell so you don't miss any further videos. And as always, look forward to more videos coming soon. My name is Ben, people call me Meter, and I'll see you guys in the next one.